So, you say you're not a controversialist, and I sort of, reading and listening to you, I can just hear that your tone and posture is not like someone who's really up for a fight. But this position has, like, when I was doing my deep dive research, going searching and listening to podcasts and videos, and half the entries are these very lovely devotional long form things on the Examine, and that's you speaking, and then half of them are this terrible heretic works of Satan. I don't need to repeat it all to you. Like, bile, real,
Yeah, they're
very,
really
people
mean.
feel very strongly about it.
They do. Yeah, it's really a strange thing.
How have you navigated that personally and spiritually?
Well, it's actually an easy question to answer because I think about it all the time. I was on a retreat years ago, like 7 or 8 years ago, and I was praying about a passage called the Rejection at Nazareth. And so, for those people who aren't Christian or don't know the Bible very well, it's about Jesus preaching in his hometown of Nazareth. He preaches, and initially everybody thinks he's great. And then he starts to say, well, you're probably going to say, do miracles here like you did somewhere else. And a prophet is not welcome in his own land. And they start to get angry at him. They get so angry at him, they chase him out of the synagogue and they drive him to what's called the brow of the hill to throw him off, i.e., they try to kill him, which is usually kind of downplayed when we talk about this. And I remember praying about this. In the Jesuits, we have this tradition of imagining yourself in a scene. I mean, literally just picturing yourself and trusting that what comes up is maybe what God wants you to look at. And I imagine myself in the scene, and I imagine asking Jesus, like, how could you do this? Like, how could you know what they were going to say. Like, you come up and you say, I'm the Messiah. And what I heard in prayer, not orally, but what kind of came up to me was Jesus asking me in prayer, must everyone like you? That was a big, and remember we were talking about when I was young, how that was a big thing for me, right? Getting everyone to like me. And it is for everybody at that age. And I had to admit to myself, I needed to be free of that. So that's the first thing. Not everybody's going to like me. Second thing is I have the support of the Pope, of the Jesuits, of my brother Jesuits. I do everything within the church. I remind myself of that. And then the third thing, I think it's the right thing to do. And people are going to push back. They didn't like, our model in this is Jesus, and they didn't like Jesus. A lot of people didn't like Jesus. And then there's a lot of homophobia out there, and I have to kind of ignore it. I'm used to it now. It's still, I'll be honest, I don't talk about this too much. It's still very weird for me because, I go about my daily life and maybe I give a talk at some place and, there's like 100 protesters. And I just think, me, you're upset about me? And people think I'm devious and deceitful and all this. I've never challenged church teaching. I'm basically just trying to get people to listen to LGBT people. But people feel very strongly about it. When I was at the Synod last year, it's supposed to be a big gathering where everybody listens to each other. One delegate refused to sit next to me and he left. He was so angry. And I was like, look, dude, I didn't say this, but even if you think I'm a sinner, right, you're supposed to sit next to me. Like, that's the Gospels. So look, most of the other thing we have to remember is this. Most of the people there might be people who would disagree with me and say, oh, I'm not sure about that. But the people who get enraged, a lot of it's their own stuff. It's something going on inside of them about their own sexuality. And I've had enough people write to me, believe it or not, saying, 5-10 years ago, I was against you, but I've just come out, etc. Right. So there's a certain psychological makeup of the person who's just enraged.
And I'm really interested in these. There's the sociologist who calls it mutual radicalization, the way in which disagreement and difference kicks us into fight or flight, and when someone attacks us and we react defensively, then they attack, and we sort of harden into these extreme positions. And I sort of see Jesus' teaching in the New Testament around turning the other cheek and loving our enemies as these amazing sort of countervailing practices. But I know I've had very, very much radically less than the abuse that you've had. But in the instances where I've experienced something similar, the reaction in me is really like,
I mean, that you're a human being.
Frankly, screw you. Like, these are the reasons you're stupid and wrong.
Yeah, I mean, you're a human being, and I sometimes feel that interiorly. But I did something really interesting over the last year. So I'm a member of the Synod, which is for not even a lot of Catholics, maybe worldwide gathering of people to help the church move ahead in terms of its governance and looking at different issues. And we met last year for the first time, 350 delegates. We're meeting in October of this year, and it's to really help Pope Francis make his decisions. It's very consultative. They call it the
Yeah.
largest consultative gathering in world history, which it probably is, because
Wow.
it asks people from every parish in the world, right? There are Catholics
Wow.
everywhere. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, when I was there, there was the LGBTQ issue came up, and let me tell you, the stuff people said. Some people, most people were quite open and welcoming, but some people were really just. I said to someone, you could get arrested in the States for hate speech for saying some of these things. So what I did was I really sought them out. I really tried to talk to them face to face. And then over the past year, I did a little project, I mean, off and on, where I would meet with them on Zoom or email or just in person. And I wrote an article about it that just came out at that outreach.faith, which is our website, and America Media, on that process and what I learned and what their objections were, and also what my responses are. So it is possible. It's hard, though. It's hard when people tell you. I had an African archbishop say to me, the only reason people are gay in my country. Now imagine you have to be polite to everyone you meet, but certainly at the synod, certainly to an archbishop as a priest. The only reason people are gay in my country is because Americans like you come and pay them to be gay. So you have to just, okay, Archbishop, let's talk about that. And really, so it's hard. It's a lot of work, but we have to become good listeners and good friends before we can tackle the tough stuff.